We now invite Dr. S. Soudhia, Assistant Professor, Center for Information Technology and Engineering, Manoormaniam Sundarnar University. Ma'am, please.
Good afternoon, all, and welcome to the second session of the day. It is an introduction to digital forensics. I'm delighted to introduce the resource person of this session, Mr. Phaneedhar, BN. He is a court-commissioned forensic expert, advocate, director, and chief forensic expert of the Clue 4 Evidence Forensic Lab, which is the law enforcement industry that offers complete solution on frauds and risk management areas. With PG Diploma in Forensic Documents and Fingerprint Examination, Postgraduation Diploma in Cyber Law and Cyber Forensics, and a Postgraduate Diploma in Human Rights Law, and an LLM in Crimes and Torts, he has over 12 years of forensic expertise and 4 years has served as a legal professional. In his experience, he has examined over 5,000 cases, including handwriting, signatures, ink, papers, rubber stamps, security documents, fingerprints, accident reconstruction and truth verification tests, digital examination of evidences. Also has worked as a lead investigator in several high-profile corporate cases. He has received the Dedicated Teacher Award given by His Excellency, the Governor of Karnataka, Sri Hansraj Bharadwaj, and have won several Best Paper Awards for the research papers presented at national level conferences related to forensic sciences. He is also a member in the International Association of Document Examiners USA, International Association for Identification, Indian Academy of Forensic Science, Kolkata. Other than this, he has delivered lectures at several institutions including banks, insurance companies, Karnataka Police Academy, on law, life science, psychology, and forensic departments of several universities. Now I invite Mr. B.N. Phaneedhar to share his expertise on Introduction to Digital Forensics. Sir, please.
Sir, shall I share it?
Yes, madam. Thank you. Participants, namaste. First of all, I'm very happy to be a part of this FDP program. And to the extent of my involvement in this activity is concerned, I am giving the topic of Introduction to Digital Forensics. However, I must mention that this topic is one such topic which is the critical need of the hour, which is for both the people who are in the technical domain as well as on the legal domain. So in this particular frame of time which is given to me, I am trying to cover a basic idea about the digital forensics, their legal implications, and few technical aspects of the investigations. However, I'll be handling a separate session on the demonstration of certain tools on how we use it for the purpose of the examination using the digital forensic tools. Before I proceed ahead, the important question what we have to understand and what we should ascertain from our side is about, because we are discussing about the term forensics, and it's very essential for us to understand what forensics is. Keeping apart all the explanations which we have read in the textbooks, because it mentions forensics is a branch of science dealing with the investigation process, and that particular aspect of science which has got some kind of logical reasonings. Keeping all those things apart, the question before us is to understand the application of forensics. And if you ask me, I would like to explain the term forensics like this. When I say forensics, it is the numeric 4 and numeric 6, which makes 4 and 6. Surprisingly, when we look at the result 4 plus 6, okay, we get the value of numeric 10, where in the binary systems, 1 is always given as a truth value and 0 is always given as a false value. So the term forensics, we need to understand here in such a way that forensics is such a process which is going to ascertain any given claim. So the claim can be given by any investigator, any court of law, or any client for that matter. So when the claim is submitted to a forensic expert, the forensic expert, after doing all the required examination, will conclude if that claim was true, that is the numeric 1, what is for the truth value, or if such claim was false, that is for the 0 is for the false value. So ultimately, the term forensics is to be understood to be that process which justifies if the claim given to the expert or the examiner being a truthful and legitimate claim, or not truthful or a wrong claim or illegitimate claim. So that is the whole purpose of forensics. When we're discussing about forensics here, there's always a question about if this process of forensics is a science or arts. So before the court of law, whenever the evidences are taken, whenever the expert is being examined, there are many such questions which arises. If such report was based on a complete scientific procedure, or it's a result of some kind of skill. If you ask me, or we should definitely try to get an answer right now between what science is and what arts is. However, there might be different, kind of opinions by different, people in this forum. To make it very simple, science is something which remains science anytime, anywhere, which actually means if I say H2O is equal to water, it is the same formula to be applied in India, US, Australia, UK, wherever you go. However, arts is something which is purely based on the skill. It depends on how much you have practiced something to possess that kind of confidence or the skill on the particular subject. When we are discussing about the term forensics, the whole question arises if the process of forensics is because of science or because of arts. We need to understand, because forensics has got both science and arts in it. How? If you ask me, the process of examination or any expert who examines a particular sample before at his custody, what he does is a complete scientific examination. Okay, but the way he interprets the result, the way he prepares an opinion, the way he prepares his report, and the way he submits it to the respective authority, this is where the arts comes into picture. Because if I say about the arts, it is the creativity and skill of the expert, how he wants to bring it before the court or before the client in convincing the results of his examination. So just, while you all see, the experts would see a particular process scientifically, the way they present their report is always an art. Okay, this is where forensics involves scientific process of examination, artistic way of presenting your observations or the understanding. Just to make it very simple, to give you another example of this, suppose 10 people watch the same movie, okay, assume Bahubali, and 10 people will watch the same movie for 2 hours and 45 minutes. And when you ask the person number one, what is the story about Bahubali? This person would say, this is a story of this. In 3 minutes, he'll conclude the whole story of Bahubali. Whereas you ask the same question to a second person, this person might take around 5 to 8 minutes to narrate the whole story. However, when you ask the third person, he might actually take 15 minutes, fourth person might take 30 minutes, fifth person 40 minutes, whatever. And you can also find people who watch a movie of 2 hours and 45 minutes. But when you ask them the story about the movie, they would even take 4 hours to narrate you the whole 2 hours 45 minutes movie. So whatever people watched for 2 hours 45 minutes, that complete story is the same. But the way everybody explains that particular movie as per their perception, as per the way they want to bring it in, this is where the arts play a picture. So ultimately, the forensics, when I discuss about it, definitely there is a scientific process and artistic way of presenting your results. So when somebody here asks me the question as to why is this relevant for our topic of discussion today, because forensics, now let's go to the explanation of the textbooks. Forensics means it is that branch of science which deals with the legal investigations or which supports the legal investigations. Unless and until we know how to artistically produce the report before the court, whatever the best thing we do sitting in the laboratory, that is of no use, because the forensics, the ultimate purpose of forensics is to support the legal investigation or the judicial system. If our report is such a way that it is not going to be helping the a judge or the adjudicating authority to rely upon the opinion, the report is of no use. So for this reason, it is very, very important for every one of us here to understand the scientific process and the artistic way of presenting our reports. When at this point in time, it is now relevant for us to discuss about what is digital forensics or what is digital forensics, because digital forensics is technically can be explained as the preservation, identification, extraction, interpretation, and documentation of computer evidence which can be used in the court of law. However, when we ask in the same explanation, is it always going to be computer evidence? The terminology has to be understood in such a way. It's a electronic evidence. Okay, whatever the small gadgets we use today, it might be called as a small computer, microcomputer, mini computer, but ultimately computer in this explanation is to be understood as the electronic device or electronic evidence. So which can be used in the court of law. So the digital forensics is such process of preservation, identification, extraction, interpretation, and documentation of computer evidence, which can be used in court of law. Because when most of the cases, when the examination is conducted, there is nothing. There is no, even any kind of possibility that we expect this report to be brought before the court of law. But depending upon the situation, depending upon the outcome of the data, it might go to the court. However, when we start the examination of the forensics, the purpose of forensic report is to fulfill the need of the legal system. So for that reason, the digital forensics also covers all the aspects of preservation of electronic evidences, electronic samples, identification of such data, extraction of such data from those devices, interpretation. This is where we kept on discussing so far as to how the interpretation might actually affect your report, and documentation. So participants, the every part of our discussion here, all the 5 aspects what we have included in this explanation have its own weightage, its own pros and cons for the purpose of the legal procedure. So if any such thing, if the digital examiner fails to do so, the whole question arises on the burden of proof. If we are not able to substantiate our findings by following, if in case by compromising any such aspect of this explanation, the report will not be as good as evidence to be considered before the court, which means now the question is about the significance. Well, most of us, even if we don't belong to a forensic fraternity, but even as laymen, we all can understand how important the fingerprint in a given case of investigation. We all agree fingerprints are such piece of evidence or such category of evidence which can never be disputed. And once we get a fingerprint, that we definitely can identify the person behind the fingerprint. So while we all agree with the fingerprints, while fingerprints are being so accurate in terms of the evidentiary value, we are now discussing about the digital footprints. Fingerprints has a different weightage of the evidence, but the digital footprints, when we discuss about it, digital footprints are those you can never erase the digital footprints at all. Once it comes onto the digital platform, there is nothing called as erasing of the digital record. Once you post any kind of posting on your social media, even though you want to delete it, even though you feel you have deleted that information is not permanently deleted from all the sources. Once created, the data remains somewhere or the other or in the electronic format. So that is the significance of the digital data, and so is the scope of investigation is very, very vast. So there is always a question about the term digital forensics. There are many authors who explain the digital forensics as that branch of domain which includes devices, the network, cyber, everything comes into digital is one way of looking at it. However, when some authors have tried to explain the digital evidence, might be further classified as device level and the network level. So there are information, there are evidences which may be only available on the device. The device can be your computer or your mobile phone or any such electronic gadgets. So the evidence can be on the particular device, or the evidence may be such communication which was made using this device. Now, this platform, we are terming it as the cloud or the network systems. That also comes under the aspect of digital examination. So, however, in a broad understanding, we need to understand the device level examination and the network level examination. Both of it comes under the domain of digital forensics, because when we say about the routers, switches to be examined, all these things comes into network systems. So for better understanding, at this hour, we need to understand that digital forensics is not just about computers or mobile phones. It also covers cyber forensics. When we say cyber forensics, that's a extended part of the digital forensics where we discuss only about the network and cyber related activities over there. While so far we agreed that forensics is nothing but such practice which is to be presented before the court, it is also relevant for us to understand the relevant statutory provisions in India, what supports the digital evidences or the digital procedures of our investigation. First information or first relevant section for us to understand here is section 45A of Indian Evidence Act. Section 45, for making it very clear, section 45 mentions the relevancy of expert's opinion. It also says a person with a special skill or a foreign science or a foreign arts skill possessed in foreign science or a foreign art is to be called as an expert, is what section 45 says. But 45A is recently added in the recent amendments. Section 45A is added, which actually mentions that person who is referred as an examiner of electronic evidence as per section 79A of Information Technology Act his opinion is relevant, is what section 45A mentions. So ultimately, the relevancy of expert's opinion is mentioned under section 45, but section 45A specifically mentions about the section 79A, section 79A of Information Technology Act. But what is mentioned under 79A is also very, very important, because this is such provision because of which an officer can be termed as examiner of electronic evidences. So far, it would be very surprising for every one of us here. In 2000, when Information Technology Act was enacted, this section 79A actually mentioned that state or central government by a gazette notification can designate officer to be called as examiner of electronic evidence, and this person is to be in charge of examination of all the digital data, is what the provision actually mentioned. Surprisingly, till the year 2018, 18 long years of this particular act being enacted, there were no notifications issued who can actually be called as examiner of electronic evidence. Okay, but ultimately, in the recent years, 2018 or later, there has been a notification done by the respective central government or the state government, and so far 7 people in India are nominated as examiner of electronic evidences. So these people are only notified in the year 2018. But when you ask me the question, what happened between 2000 and 2018, and what happened to those cases which were being examined and which were being reported? So under what provisions? So the experts used to be reporting. This actually goes under section 45 of Indian Evidence Act, not 45A. It goes under section 45 because a person who is skilled in a foreign science or a foreign art is to be called as an expert, is what section 45 mentions. So for this limitation, because there was no notification, so for this reason, all the experts, okay, who are being given, who are giving the reports on the electronic evidences, used to be falling under the category of section 45. But the moment 45A is enacted and the 45A refers to section 79A, now it's very clear that certain agencies are nominated as examiner of electronic evidences, and their report will be considered as relevant under section 45A of Evidence Act. However, there's one important provision under Evidence Act which specifies a complete provision on authentication of electronic evidences or authentication of electronic data. So section 65B of Indian Evidence Act actually talks about the forensic examination of the digital evidences. Who can authenticate, how the data can be authenticated. So who can actually give 65B certificate in the particular process. So all these things are clearly discussed in section 65B of Indian Evidence Act. However, when we might be very happy about, oh my God, we have got some provision under the law which can actually be used for the forensic evidences, there are definitely certain limitations of 65B, where 65B talks about the data being extracted directly from the device, or such officer who is authorized to take the record from his computer and to certify under 65B as a copy of the data. So all these things are there. But what important aspect which is missing in 65B is the multimedia evidences. Because, say for example, 65B gives a provision, if this is my mobile phone, I connect my mobile phone to my computer and I extract all the data from my computer, from my mobile phone to my computer. I then prepare a CD and submit the CD to the court with a declaration that I am the owner of the mobile phone, I am the owner of this computer, I have copied all my data of the particular mobile phone to the computer, and I have made a CD, and this is a CD. If I give this document, that is a document under section 65B. There is one provision for this. So the court of law is now satisfied that 65B certificate is obtained. So all the data which is mentioned in the CD seems to be authentic is what one way of looking at it. But what is the biggest threat here is that the data what is in my mobile phone, which is probably audio recording, video recording, or image, there is no provision to authenticate these files when I submit this record to the court. So court will only rely upon 65B certificate here because of the transfer procedure, but not questioning the data validity from my mobile device. So there is a challenge here, how we're going to submit the electronic data in the court of law. So, however, 65B is one such provision under Indian Evidence Act, which specifies about authentication of electronic evidences. Application of digital forensics, probably every one of us here understands, and they don't dispute when I mention the application of digital forensics includes financial fraud detection. Okay, today any kind of frauds, the mobile device can be the key for all the investigation of our devices. So second is criminal prosecution. For any kind of prosecution today, we require evidences, and these days we are getting most of the evidences in digital format. Which is also important is child pornography. Child pornography is declared as an offense not just in India but in international standards. Okay, so it's been declared as a offense. UNO, United Nations Organizations, has declared child pornography as an offense. To that extent, even if somebody searches in the browser child pornography, even this can be considered as an offense, okay, to a certain extent. So next is civil litigations, because civil litigations, they can be marital disputes or any kind of property disputes. Even that extent, okay, mobile phone or the computer records these days has got the evidences. So corporate security, yes, the corporate security is one such domain which has got a lot of relevance to the digital evidences, because if you consider about email investigations or any kind of files which are stored in a particular computer, then that is to be investigated. All these things becomes a relevant application of digital forensics. And when I mention this, the whole list includes, but not limited to, the information what you're able to see on the screen. However, the digital forensics application might be very vast and it might be subjective in many cases. Oh my God. When we are looking at the sources of digital evidence today, it is not a very small thing, because the list is very big. If I just want to read out the list on the screen, okay, including all the hardwares, floppy, hard disk, voicemails, electronic diaries, external hard disks, CDs, DVDs, USBs, memory devices, magnetic tapes, RFID tags, PDAs, smart cards, web pages, scanners, printers, fax, photocopiers, digital mobile phones, iPods, cell phones, digicams, GPS devices, digital TV, CCTV, and etc. Because there might be many such devices which we have not listed here, but it is going to be under the explanation of electronic, device. So when we are discussing such a huge list of digital evidences, and people, we have to understand that all the list which is mentioned here, every such thing might have a different process, different tool for the purpose of examination. Because whatever the tool we use for a pen drive might not be so relevant to examine a mobile memory card. And that might not be again relevant to examine a camera flash drive. So every such thing is very, very different, and the list of digital evidences, the source of digital evidences is going to be really huge, and it is not something which we actually can list out here, because when we discuss about digital footprints, okay, when servers come into picture, when computers come into picture, so it is going to create multiple sources, and this is going to be very limited understanding about the sources of digital evidences. However, the most commonly used digital evidences are something which I am trying to bring it on the screen. Emails, digital photographs, ATM transactions, the Word documents, the instant messaging applications, which includes WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook messengers, Telegram, all these things comes under instant messaging applications. File saved from accounting programs, which includes the tally backup or any such application which is used for the accounting purpose. So spreadsheets, Google spreadsheets, internet browser histories, database of any kind, the content of computer memory, anything in the computer, which is what I'm referring to, computer backups, computer printouts, global positioning system tracks, GPS, and digital videos and audio files. So these are very few. Okay, you commonly use digital evidence categories. Okay, participants, when you ask me what is the best mobile, what is the best digital evidences what you can get for the day, I would answer in simple terms, it is your mobile phone. The mobile phone consists of all the information what you can see on the screen right now, except for the computer backups and computer printouts. Your mobile phone can actually have a lot of data about you, your a circle, and everything on your life is on your mobile device today. And if you just want to take an example of this, what I want you to do is just take your mobile phone in hand, okay, on the Google, okay, search dashboard. All you have to do is from your Google, from your mobile device, Android device, okay, all you have to do is just type in Google dashboard. When you just type dashboard, because it's going to be relating to your account, okay, your Google account, it is going to take you to the dashboard. And in this, when you just scroll, at last, you would see maps, okay? And when you see the maps, just have to click on the maps, okay? And that will now give you the complete, okay, history of your location. As soon as you have made a location active, when I say, location must be active on the device. And if you have activated the, location on your device, if you just click on it, map timeline, you can see your complete activity, where you went, on what day, okay, whatever you have done is listed on your mobile device. And mobile device can be one such best evidence today in the crime investigations, and because of which, the digital evidences we are discussing, how we can identify, how we can extract the data, how we can present the data. So all these things becomes its own challenges, which we'll discuss in the further discussions. Yes. Participants, while we're discussing so much of different aspects of digital forensics, I must mention that how complex the domain of forensics, digital forensics is. First of all, the digital forensics is so versatile and it's so complex in nature because the tools what is required, the approach what we adopt for examination of different platforms, be it a Windows system, it might be a Mac system, or it can be Unix and Linux also. When we discuss about this kind of platforms, such platforms will be the first complexity what the digital forensic examiner will face. Because depending upon the application, depending upon the platforms, the tools what we use is going to be so different and the approach is going to be so different. Next, suppose we consider the mobile phone platforms. Again, in mobile phones, we have Android, Android phones, iPhones, Symbian, BlackBerry, and other custom-made applications platforms by different manufacturers. I mean, it might be commonly today used Android system. However, there are different applications which there are different hardwares, matlab the phones which use their own custom softwares. Third, the DVR platforms, the CCTV evidences, the CCTV manufacturers, what the DVR they give. You must know that not all the DVRs what captures the CCTV footages. The clipping is something which you cannot play on your computer or on your mobile phone just like that. I mean, that needs that own DVR. Okay, that video can only be played on that particular DVR only. If you ask me why, because they have their own custom extensions of the files, and the players, the media players, what they play is only custom made, and this particular file can only play in that particular player only. So that's why in some DVRs, when you try to copy the data, they're also going to ask you if the data is to be converted to AVI format or MPEG format. Okay, all those things it is going to ask you. So for that reason, the complexity also lies how the DVRs are going to be examined with different manufacturers and different extensions to be looked at. Next, the tools. Okay, one of the biggest challenge for digital forensics is the tools what we're going to use. So in digital forensics, it is also said that if you have good money, that means you can offer better solutions. For the reason, what are the tools we use today for the purpose of examination? And again, we have got both open source and licensed versions. Open source definitely will have some kind of limitations with in terms of the acceptability of the results by the open source tools. But however, when we look at the licensed versions of the tools, these licensed versions of the tools are sold by different international companies. And for people in India, we end up buying that particular tools, which is worth something in pounds and dollars. And very soon, with probably 1 year, once the 1 year is over, the tools are now to be renewed. For us to get recent patches, the recent updates about this particular application, we end up spending almost around 30 to 50% of the product's actual cost in terms of renewing the particular license. So these products are international and these are to be annually renewed. If we don't have this renewed or the recent versions of the application, we cannot effectively investigate the devices is what it is said. See, if you just want to get a real-time understanding about this, I just don't want to take the name of the government, but this government happened to sanction, 3 crores for a particular forensic laboratory to start with its cybercrime operation, forensic operations. So they received some budgets. They started procuring all the tools. They bindas the operator for 1 year, and after 1 year, 2 years, and even 3 years, the government is not sanctioning the funds for renewing those applications. Government says, "Arey, last year itself we have granted so and so crores of rupees for you, so we cannot give you the money again." But today, situation is that these people might be terming themselves as handicaps because they have the tool, but they don't have the updates, updates. So the tools, the criminal is using the latest phone in his hand, and if the investigator is using 3 years or 4 years old generation, investigation tools, that will be as good as having nothing. So this is one such complexity what we face in the digital investigations. One of the prime challenges what we usually face is the awareness for the lawyers and judges. Participants, I'm not wrong if I mention that there are few states which are very, very backward in terms of the digital forensics and digital evidences openability. I mean, they are not really today open about the digital evidences because they don't know the actual provisions of digital evidences, the provisions of 65B, provisions of 45A. So the judges, even the advocates, they don't know about this process. So for that reason, best of the best reports what we prepare sitting in the laboratory, the acceptability and the awareness itself is not there before the court of law. So for this reason, so it's still a very complex situation for us to submit and plead before the court with a good piece of evidence which can support a conviction of a criminal or acquittal of an innocent person. In terms of the digital evidences what we receive, there are different challenges what we also face. So while I mentioned different operational challenges before, so this is kind of a physical challenge. But when we are called to a scene of fire, okay, there might be a big go down which actually is caught fire, and this go down had a CCTV. Now, first to recover the DVR data, which is the hard disk, which is the DVR, this is affected because of the fire. So with the hard disk which is affected because of the fire, this is a challenge. Crushed, it might be a physical damage. Soaked because of so when the fire was happening, DVR was safe. But to fight the fire engine was called. So fire engine, they just use the water guns, and because of water, this evidence is now tampered. It is actually damaged. So when such kind of things are brought before us, that's going to be another level of challenge for us to examine such fire, crushed, and soaking affected devices. It can be any kind of computers or DVRs, or including any kind of storage devices. Challenges in digital forensics, which also includes the technical challenge. It is also called as the anti-forensics, where we get to see encrypted data, that is encryption, steganography, data hiding in a storage space. Files are hidden. Probably we'll discuss about it when we do the practicals. So the data wiping. So all these things are some of the practical challenges what usually experience depending upon the maturity of the cyber criminal. When we say maturity of the cyber criminal, if the person is a programmer by himself, he would actually do all this encryption. If in case he's again a cryptography expert, he might actually do steganography, hide the information in some kind of file. What we see might be different than what actually is there in the particular file which is hidden. That is called steganography. So again, when we look at other challenges, the resources are one of the biggest challenge for a digital forensic expert. I'll tell you why. Because before this, I discussed about the resources which includes the licensed versions. But even otherwise, the hardware requirement for a digital forensic expert is also going to be very, a high level of systems which are to be used. The server configuration systems. When I say server configuration systems, I refer to the high-speed processors, 64, 128 GB of RAM with good graphics, with good all this. Things will come as a package. So we should have that system which is as good as the server level, which can perform good. So otherwise, the data what we try to procure, it will take hours together, days together to start giving the analysis results for us. So in the investigation, dear participants, time is the essence of the investigation. When we lose the time, even if you get the data, that will be of no use. That's what will happen in the cybercrime investigations. Suppose if we delay, in terms of finding a IP address or other related data, the person who committed the crime would not be there when the investigators will actually find the location. That's why the quick action is very, very important for the investigations, and for the digital investigation, the best technology along with the best hardware what we use will give us the best results. Second, the legal challenges. The legal challenges, I would like to give you one important case understanding. there was this IAS officer who was actually suspected of some kind of white collar crime. When I say white collar crime, he was suspected of, having some disproportionate assets, which actually comes under the Income Tax and Enforcement Directorate. So when this team happened to raid his premises, they procured, they seized his mobile phone and laptops. So for the investigation, what is required by the income tax, so they are supposed to be investigating as to what data he has got, financial data he has got, what assets he has made. So for that reason, they were trying to investigate. And because it's not any other case, they were actually not typically following all the required procedures as per the digital examination is to be conducted. So what they did, they came to the office, they switch on the laptop. Now they're trying to search the laptop for some data. Surprisingly, they found some pornographic contents. And this pornographic contents is not ordinary pornographic content, participants. It was child pornographic contents. It was found in a IAS officer's laptop. Now, because the procedure of the examination is not actually followed with the due course of digital forensic examination, this was a case where we had to learn that this person, the IAS officer, happened to plead before the court saying that when the laptop was seized, there was no such records, but there was no pornographic contents. But when the investigators took it to the office, just because they want to frame him for some case, they are trying to frame me in a wrong case, is what he took as a pleading. And however, since in this case the digital process was not followed, as a digital process, it is very important to understand the last accessed date and time of the device is very, very important, because the time of seizure says, say for example, a size of seizure says 1st June 2021. That is a time on which the device was seized. But after 6 days, after 7 days, 10th of June, the investigators are all fine. Okay, come, let's find the data in this laptop. They switched on the laptop. When the moment they switched on, the logs were created. So now when you try to examine using forensic tools, the device last access date and time will show 10th June 2021. But actual date of seizure is 1st June 2021. So this is where the evidence is actually affected, because in forensic tools, what we use to investigate, we cannot manipulate all this date, time, and other things, because that is why it is called as forensic tools. The human cannot do anything regarding the timestamp entries and date entries over there. So for this reason, this case was one example of legal challenges, because irrespective of whichever the department you belong to, whichever the investigation you're conducting, when initially we discussed that digital forensics are that particular category of data which might go to the court. So for this reason, here the lapses of the investigation was seen. That's why that person was not able to be convicted under child pornography provisions. However, regarding the income tax, that's a different question. Whether he was convicted or not, that's not a question to be discussed right now. But what was important, because they failed to follow a due course of procedure for investigation of the digital evidence, the actual data which could have been resulting in a criminal prosecution, okay, so that was actually compromised in this case. So this is one of the challenge where until we start the process of digital examination, we will not know what is there in the particular device. So it's like a mine, okay, more we dig is what we get. So for this reason, the legal challenges also includes this kind of provisions and this kind of interferences by different authorities in the sample which is to be termed as a digital evidence tomorrow. However, when we discuss about the rules of evidences, especially in terms of the court procedures of any category of evidence, admissibility, authenticity, and it has to be complete and reliability. To ensure this, okay, the digital forensics is what we're trying to discuss. And for this reason, the main category, main type of digital evidence, which we have to understand, the two categories is volatile and non-volatile data. Volatile is such data which are very sensitive to the power supply of the device. See, especially when we're using the computer, when you're trying to browse some information, or when you're trying to do some activity, when you go to the processes, okay, there's a device manager, and when you go to the task manager, when you look at the processes, there are 100 different processes what can be seen on your laptop or your desktop. So this process will talk about what application is running, why is it running, and what is the relevancy of that application on your device. So all these things becomes relevant, okay, in the terms of examination. So the moment you shut down the computer, this information is lost. So this data, what is sensitive to the power, so is called as a volatile data. That means memory that loses its contents if power is turned off. That is the data of the volatile. The best example for this data stored in RAM. That is a random access memory. Okay, that is the data which actually can be lost because you switch off the computer. However, non-volatile data, that is, it is not sensitive to the power. Matlab, the data which is stored on the permanent storage devices, that is hard disk, the pen drive, all those things comes under your non-volatile data, which is not sensitive to the power supply. So these are the two major categories of the types of digital evidences participants. But however, when we discuss about the digital forensic examination process, first is the identification of the relevant sample device as a good piece of evidence to the case. Next is its preservation. When we say about preservation, that's something which people have to really spend time in understanding. What is the procedure for preservation of a hard disk? What is the procedure for preservation of a mobile phone? What is the procedure for every such storage device? The preservation procedures are all different. Say, for example, it's a suicide case, and the police find a mobile phone which contains some kind of audio recording as a suicide note. And when the police is supposed to be, seizing this device, okay, how do they seize is a very big question, because police are supposed to be putting the mobile device into the aeroplane mode. Okay, when you put the phone in the aeroplane mode, okay, that actually cuts all this network interference, and the updates will be frozen. So this is where it's a good sample for the purpose of examination. And if the phone is not logged, it should not be logged, because if it gets logged, if you don't know the password to open it, so the data might be lost. In the process of finding the password, the data might be lost. So for this reason, the procedure for preservation for every such sample is going to be very, very different for each category of storage devices. Next is the analysis. Analysis of what? Again, the data, what you're looking for should be well known to you. What nature of case is this? Suppose it is a suspected terrorist. So for terrorist, what all data are you going to search for? So the GPS is relevant, where and all he had been, so that is relevant. And the keywords, okay, you should search his email if in case he is communicating about some kind of blast, some kind of arms, ammunitions, their code words, all these things becomes relevant for your analysis. So the next is when you do analysis, next is the documentation. Because if you have 1 TB of hard disk, not entire 1 TB of hard disk is required to be documented. In 1 TB of hard disk, around 500 MB might be relevant data for your case of investigation. When you know that 500 MB is relevant, how do you document only 500 MB becomes a challenging part of it. So next is a presentation. So how do you present this 500 MB of data is again a challenge. If you ask me, how do you present, see, for example, 1 TB of hard disk, so there are few images, okay, which is very relevant to the particular case. So how do you present the images before the court? So can I just copy the images in the pen drive and show before the court? No. Okay, if you ask me what is the procedure required, all these images are to be given the examination of image authentication process. I recovered the data, I recovered all these images from the hard disk. Okay, the entire hard disk gave me a hash value. So in the entire hard disk, okay, 1 TB of data got a hash value. So for this images which I am trying to use it as an evidence right now, for each of the images, I had to derive the hash value now. I had to now get the metadata of each of the image files. I had to find the file properties of each of the files. I had to do a forensic examination of the image of these images. Then I have to submit to the code saying that this hard disk gave me this hash value, in which these were few of the images which were relevant for this particular case. These images were further examined. So this images when examined, it was shown the date of capture is this, time of capture is this, device from which it was captured is this. So this image has been not observed with any kind of tampering attempts. There has been no Photoshop or CorelDRAW which is used to edit these images, including the mobile phone software tools. We have got a lot of software tools to edit the data on the mobile phone. So this image is a result of direct capturing of a real-time incidents and not the result of any other application which has been used to modify or create such photograph. So such will be the aspect to be given to the code. And again, how do I give a copy to the code? So I had to give a copy to the code by pen drive. I had to print those images. I had to give one copy to the code in a pen drive. And I had to give one copy to the opposite counsel. It can be a defense counsel or opposite party, because when I give the data to the code through pen drive, what is the legal provision for them to take a copy of the pen drive? There has been no legal provision for taking a copy of the pen drive. So all these things becomes the procedure for the digital evidence submission. So this is where we need to understand digital forensic process. And the need for the digital process to ensure the integrity of digital system, to focus on the response to high-tech offenses started to intervene the system. Digital forensics has been efficiently used to track down the terrorists from the various parts of the world and to produce evidence in the court that can lead to the punishment of the criminals. So it can be not just the terrorists. Terrorists are one category of criminals, but however, in the Information Technology Act, okay, a big list of cyber crimes are reported to effectively demonstrate that cyber crimes, that digital evidences are very, very important, and the digital examination process is very, very important to demonstrate such kind of data. However, examination and reporting aspects need to be looked at. The search and seizure procedures, this need to be secured, because if any procedural aspect is compromised, even if we have the best data in hand, still the benefit of doubt is given to the accused. Okay, so first, the police officers, the procedure what they follow for search and seizure of the electronic or digital evidences are to be so secured. Okay, which is as per the procedure they have to follow and secure the devices. Next, documentation with the description of the articles. So whatever they seize, the device, serial numbers, the make, model, capacity of the storage, whatever best explains the particular device, that is to be mentioned in the documentation procedure, including the pen drives, including the CDs. They get the serials printed on the CDs. If participants, if you are not aware of this, so please take any CD or DVD disc and very close to the core, that is the center, there will be a black color printing. That is the serial number of the disc. So that is also very important of what you're trying to seize. So memo of instructions. When such devices are seized, what is important is to inform the examiner as to what needs to be conducted in this case. If I have suspected a person to be a Naxal, if I have suspected a person to be a drug dealer, so what are the relevant facts I am expecting from this particular device? So that memo of instructions, okay, should be mentioning the case history, case background, and what the investigation officer is looking forward from the examination process. Next, ensure if the network interface is cut off. I just mentioned when the mobile phone is the evidence that phone is to be kept on the network disconnection mode, the airplane mode. Okay, that is the best procedure for submission of the mobile phone. Otherwise, when we keep on having the activation of the network, the WhatsApp which is on this phone can be parallelly activated on a different phone, and this phone will not have any data of the WhatsApp. And when we log on to other device, all the data of the WhatsApp can be wiped off. But if I put this phone on the airplane mode, whatever data is available on this particular phone, even if the other person is trying to activate the WhatsApp on a parallel device, this device will not lose the data which it already has got. So that secures the complete data on this device, which can be extracted in the due course of forensic examination. Next, the write blocker and imaging. This is very, very important to be understood, because the devices, suppose if I get a hard disk, okay, and when I want to recover the data from the hard disk, when I connect the hard disk to my computer will create some kind of logs and activity on that particular hard disk. That is a wrong procedure. For this reason, to avoid any kind of logs being created on the target, the source hard disk, we use a device or a software which does some activity called as write blocker, which means there will be no activity which can be created on the source disk. This is going to secure the last time of access, a date and time which I mentioned. That's going to be so secured if we use the write blocker. If you don't use the write blocker, there might be a recent time of what you're trying to access can be created as a log on the target hard disk. Next is the imaging. Imaging is one of the important parameter or one of the important procedure of digital examination of the devices. Because when we have the source disk, we are not supposed to be examining the source disk at all. When you say at all, the source disk should not be used directly for the purpose of examination. What we do otherwise is that the source disk is to be done imaging. When I say imaging, it is not copying the data. Imaging includes the complete replica of the source hard disk, including the allocated sectors and the unallocated sectors, because the data on the hard disk will be stored in sectors. So some sectors might be active, which is allocated, and some sectors might be unallocated. But when we do imaging, the entire hard disk, allocated and unallocated, both of it gets as an image. And this image file can be used to do whatever experiments, examination the examiner wants to do. This image file will be as good as the source disk. So this is very, very important concept. And there are both hardware write blockers and software write blockers. So E01 is the file. It is the raw file. When I say raw file, that is the image file. That is a standard image file, which actually will be derived from the imaging process. And that will be used for further examination by the examiners. Next, what is important next is the keyword search. If you don't form the proper keywords of what you want the data from, you will not be able to conclude your examination at all, because you should know what you need to search. Using different tools, you're going to search for the file extensions. Okay, you can search based on file extensions. You can search based on the file names. You can search based on the timelines. You can search based on the user profiles. So all these things are possible, but you should know what you're searching for. That is why keyword search is mentioned. And second is the deleted data recovery. The data which is not accessible to the user, which the user might think it is deleted, that is still available to a forensic expert, but the digital forensic expert with the forensic tools, because we still are able to recover the data which is deleted to a normal user. So I'm going to demonstrate this in the subsequent discussion, because we have a separate topic for demonstrating of all these things. So that time I'll demonstrate how the data can be recovered. So next is the multimedia examination. I mentioned the files also include the data in the multimedia format. The audio authentication, email authentication, video authentication. When we discuss about audio authentication, what is the file authentication? Okay, if it is the single file, or if it is a result of multiple audio files merged to get as one result, that is the question. After this, the question is about the speaker identification. Who is the speaker in the particular audio file? So that becomes a further extension of the examination. Video examination, video, whatever video is there, the audio which is relevant in the video, is it the same audio which is recorded while the video was captured, or is there any other audio which is attached to the existing video file? That becomes a question. So all these things are relevant examination for a digital evidence. Next is the email examination, which includes the source, email header, IP, everything comes into the email examination. Browser examination, that is, we discussed about this. Now we can discuss this in the browser history. That is one possibility. Or when we capture the device live, or when you capture the computer live, you can still take the browser activities over there. And the registry examinations. So whatever the computer is performing, which includes taking any kind of prints, adding any kind of pen drives. So all these things, definitely the device has got all the information. The only the statement in the investigation, it is said, things are not seen unless it is looked for. Until and unless you look forward for something, you will not get it. So when you start looking for all these things, your device has got all the information what you require to conclude on a particular investigation aspect. Last but not the least, the report generation. Because when we do the forensic examination of the devices, the applications might give you thousands of pages of report. But what is relevant? It is the examiner's call to what sheets, to what extent, how he want to present his findings. That is when we initially discussed that the presentation itself is a skill of the examiner. So here, without compromising on the technical standards, without compromising on the legal standards, and facilitating the good understanding about the report, what you're submitting. So this is going to be the stage where you submit your report along with the suitable files in the CD format or in the pen drive format. So whatever format we should be giving it, so that will be submitted in the last stage of the examination. So this is something which we had to discuss at this hour, dear participants. And I'm sure that many of you might have a lot of questions on this particular topics, because as I initially mentioned, this is one of the most versatile domain of examination. But with all said and done, I feel that whatever the basics and whatever the initial observations, initial understanding is to be given for for a layman, or even if people who know about the digital cyber forensics, so the legal aspects of it. So I believe I have covered this in the given frame of time. So for further any questions on this, I definitely will be very happy to take up the questions now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now the session is open for questions. You can either type it into the chat box, or else you can raise virtual hand. Participants, please. If you have any questions, you can post it in the chat box.
Sir, hopefully you can see one question in the chat box.
Fine, ma'am. First of all, the question here is that the previous location could be tracked even the device location is turned off. However, this is not possible with the help of your device because as per the Google policies, okay, whatever the permissions you give is what the Google will capture the data. So as far as you have not given that permission to the Google to capture your data, it will not capture it. But what is the next solution? It is now based on the CDR, the mobile call records, what you do. Okay, so based on the mobile network of your SIM card, that location can be tracked up to 1 year in the past. That is still possible. Can we recover data from a damaged storage disk? Sir, I don't comment very positive or very negative. To answer your question, there are cases, in spite of the devices being damaged, okay, the memory circuit is not actually tampered or affected. So there are situations where we happen to shift the memory circuit itself to another hardware to access the data in that. And there are also good cases where we could not do anything about the device because it is damaged to a certain extent where we cannot do the examination at all. What about digital signatures? Digital signatures, probably I should brief what digital signature is. So the digital signature is for many of the people, they think they sign the signature, scan the document, and that signature will be used as a digital signature. No, digital signature is a particular token which is actually issued by the project called eMudra by the central government, and a person can apply for digital signature and to use the digital signature for signing the documents online. However, manipulation of this will have very limited effect because the receiver of the digitally signed document can always verify the legitimacy of the document, because the central government provides that provision to validate the signatures that can give you the result immediately. For that reason, digital signatures can always be very tough thing to manipulate. Is there any extent till digital footprints can be traced? Digital footprints can be traced, but when I also mentioned the time is the essence of the investigation, how long you are going to take to track that particular source will actually define your purpose of the investigation. Suppose if you use as simple as a Tor browser, because when people are using Google Chrome, Firefox, or Microsoft Edge, okay, we also have a Tor browser, for example, and when you use Tor browser, your IP will be frequently changed. That is the purpose of the particular browser. So when you ask me, can it not be tracked at all? It can definitely be tracked. But when is a question. Probably when I start investigating this particular case, I might take around 4 months to 5 months to track the source of the IP. And by that time, the person who committed this particular communication would not be there available. So for this reason, the time we lose it for this particular investigation, but digital footprints can always be tracked. And for investigation agencies, if you have also heard about the recent IT Act rules, the central government, the Ministry of Electronics and Communication has given the notice to the intermediaries, the WhatsApp, Twitter, Google, the companies like this. The notification has been given for these companies to provide the data for the purpose of investigation, which otherwise these companies were not giving it. So now, because the investigation agencies, they want to track the source of the information, the first digital footprint which was created, this is where the companies are now obligated to help our investigation agencies to give whatever data they are going to ask for the purpose of law enforcement. So that is going to be the understanding about the digital footprint, madam. Deleted data recovery, can overwritten data be recovered? So the overwritten data is very difficult to be recovered, and if to be more precise, we have never been able to recover the overwritten data. For the reason, this specifically applies for the DVRs, the CCTV cameras. So the hard disk will have a capacity of storing the data for 15 days, for example, and 16th day, the data starts overwriting. So we cannot able to retrieve the overwritten data. So that's a challenge. We cannot do it.
So there is another question.
Yes, madam.
In the chat box, exactly in another link. Like, can you give significance of anti-forensics techniques in cyberspace?
Madam, the anti-forensics is only going to be one of the hurdle for a smooth investigation. So whatever people try to do, because anti-forensics are those which can be committed by people who know about the forensics. For better understanding about the terminology, the anti-forensic techniques are those which makes the investigation so difficult, which includes encryption of the data, okay, which includes the data being erased or data being deleted for that matter. So setting some strong passwords for activities. Suppose I have the mobile phone, I have a separate password for the screen lock, I have a separate password for application, I have a separate password for storage. So I might set different passwords for my activity. So this activities actually cause some kind of hindrance for the purpose of investigation. But otherwise, the concepts of anti-forensics is not those which can effectively stop the investigation. It can only be causing some kind of challenges, but it is not that we can never be able to examine or encrypt data. It is not like that. It will take some time. That is the purpose of that is understanding about the anti-forensic techniques, madam.
So 2 more questions on the chat box.
Is there separate courses available for digital forensics? So yes, in the recent days there are universities which includes National Forensic Science University in Gujarat and Raksha Shakti University in Gujarat again, and there are good courses, including the MS University, which offers cyber security course, also contains a paper on digital forensics. So the other university which I mentioned, they offer full-time MSc, MTech degrees in digital forensic courses, but all the other courses which offers cyber security courses, probably this becomes one of the paper in their curriculum, which also includes in the MSc Forensic Science curriculums. What is the difference between cyber forensics and digital forensics? I actually mentioned this in a beginning of the presentation, but there is no much of difference because there are different authors who mention the digital forensics also as cyber forensics, and cyber forensics also as digital forensics. Ultimately, to be very specific to understand, digital forensics can include the cyber forensics in it. Anything which is a data of the computer is digital forensics, and the data which is to be utilized for our examination and for the purpose of legal law enforcement, that data becomes the aspect of digital forensics. So for that reason, the data can be obtained from the devices, or data can be obtained from the communication equipments which this data gets connected to. This is the understanding about the cyber and digital forensics. If a user uses VPN, he can be located. See, even if the person uses VPN, there is nothing like we cannot investigate him. But the question arises, who can locate him? So, an ordinary person will not be able to locate the exact location of the VPN user. But a law enforcement agency with the proper summons from the court or Section 91 notice of CRPC, they can request the particular VPN service provider and to get the specific information for the purpose of their investigation.
Sir, another one more question. How lawyers can pursue cyber forensics?
Forensics is a branch of science, is what we have discussed in the beginning. Okay, when we discuss about science, irrespective of the advocate, okay, having the law degree, if he has some good, overview of the science, he can definitely take up the forensic science, courses or cyber forensic degree courses. But what is more relevant for an advocate is the Information Technology Act, IT Act. That is more relevant for an advocate, because in that IT Act also there are few aspects of forensic data, hash, all these things are mentioned in that particular provision. With that law understood, and with some orientation towards the examination of the digital devices, that advocate can really do well in their professional aspect. I don't really suggest that advocate should have a MTech degree in cyber forensics. No, they need to have some cyber law degree plus some kind of exposure towards the working aspects of these digital evidences. They can really do well in the profession, madam.
Any other questions, participants? Okay. Thank you, sir, for giving your valuable insights on topic Introduction to Digital Forensics.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Ma'am, do you have any instruction for the participants?
Just one information, like submitting the feedback at around 4 o'clock. The feedback form will be available in the Google Classroom. So do fill the feedback form, and that is also considered for attendance. So check your classroom. At around 4 o'clock, it will be available. It is actually scheduled.
Okay, okay, ma'am. So, is there anything, ma'am? Shall we
So,
wind up the session?
yes, before winding up, tomorrow, today's sessions, 2 sessions successfully completed. Tomorrow, we will be meeting at 10 o'clock exactly.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Okay. So let's all back to our learning tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you all.